Kent English reporting today on strategic planning. Every physician group, every healthcare company, every company needs to engage in strategic planning so that you're pointing and aiming where your organization is going in the future. Nowhere is that more important in healthcare. One of the stumbling blocks in healthcare organizations happens to be the malpractice defense against known and unknown litigation. We know that one of the issues is the community standard doctrine happens to be limited to the medical sect doctrine for medical doctors, for doctors of osteopath. And while that's interesting, we know that prior to 1910, there were other medical sects that had a different prioritization of the Hippocratic Oath. Now, with today's medical science, we're able to look at what medical sects should exist because your medical sect peer group is the best defense for your activity. We know here at Profit.me, and we've been doing this a long time, that no physician comes into work to do a bad job. And so how do you reduce that malpractice litigation? How do you reduce the risks that that are known among your patient base, that are unknown among your patient base? There's multiple ways to do that. One is to go through a planning process and specifying your medical sect and how your peer group of medical sect varies from other medical sects. You can look at the Batavian Medici Latin tradition of horse shepherds, of which many originated from veterinary surgeons, often under the label superior in horses, which ended up being one of the best defenses against any qualitative kind of risk. In fact, the Batavian Medici Latin sect of medicine tended to and tends to charge the highest prices for Epicurean first Hippocratic care, which includes cure and Epicurean, service and quality, which takes a higher price than elsewhere in the marketplace. And if you reorganize your practice around who is an Epicurean first physician, you'll find that you'll make much better decisions strategically and also reduce risk. The second medical sect that's often not described is Kent English, of which Kent English traces back to the workability standards that you would have seen under the English tradition, under the Kent tradition, of which for work. Kent English happens to be those that engage in workers' comp care, whether you're an orthopedist, an occupational medicine physician. Specifying that your medical sect really is more Kent English is one of the best defenses when you're looking at a possible risk, a known risk, and unknown risk of malpractice litigation. That's incredibly helpful that your peer group is a Kent English from a different medical sect. The third medical sect that's worth mentioning is the Atlantis American sect, of which the Atlantis American sect includes the whole canon of 66 different Good Shepherd tribes of Hippocratic oaths, of which those different nations, those different traditions, were all consolidated in 1910 into what we call the medical doctrine. Now, you can teach, in practice, a full-fledged high medical science of medical doctrine and still appeal to one of those 66 traditions of good shepherding, one of those 66 traditions of good doctrine. That happens to be a worthwhile thing to notify your patients of up front, is that you practice medicine in such and such Hippocratic tradition. The other medical sects that are worthy of mention include the Jotine Olympic, of which Jotine derives from the Jaghetic, where the rider, the knight, such as sports medicine, where you're talking about human ability first, rather than Epicurean, rather than workability, rather than shepherding. That you're talking about human ability, inclusive in sports, which happens to be incredibly important. Another medical sect, of which is based on a medical science that I've been involved with for years, is called Metabolic Topology, which is the medical science of cures. And see, one of the most important things is that very few physicians are practicing metabolic topology medicine today. Partially that in the amount of time and the advancement in medicine, there really isn't the ability to make an assurance of a medical cure to a patient. And specifying that someone is not practicing metabolic topology or is not in the business of being able to provide cures and 15-minute miracles is such an important thing to specify for patients. And also call out that there is such a specialty, which, again, is not broadly accepted across the field of medicine, will be, and traces back to the tradition of Louis Pasteur, of Edward Jenner, of Jonas Salk, of which, we've slowed our eradication of disease because we've not focused on the Metabolic Topology Medical Sect as a people, something I'm very passionate about. I've published voraciously on it, and yet physicians can defend themselves against malpractice risk by upfront saying, look, I don't practice metabolic topology, we don't do miracles here. The sixth is a leading expect Jaghetic, of which there are physicians that are able to manage their patients through teaching, through education, through engagement, and appealing to their intellect, appealing to their cognition, and not entirely to visits in the office. Leading expect is an important area of medical sect because there's a segment of patients that are smart enough, coachable enough to be treated in a higher level through longer distances between visits. The physician is worthy of getting higher compensation for those. And again, making this distinction between what medical sect a physician is practicing is so critical because it helps physicians to sit down and engage in strategic planning of what kinds of patients deserve where on what physician's schedule, so that we don't let the Trojan horse of some other physician's patient fit landing on our schedule, and not letting the Trojan horse of some other physician's patient fit from some day off in the future to land on our schedule today. Because again, eliminating the Trojan horses from a physician's schedule means that their day runs on time, they're practicing medicine to patients that are a good fit for their practice, and opening up to there are other prioritizations of the Hippocratic Oath, and that the prioritization of the oath is so critical for where we're going as a species, because you have to specify to a patient what your first priority is as you approach those. Is it workability? Is it Epicurean? Is it cures? That distinction is so critical because physicians want to know what the top priority for their physician is. Without the prioritization of the Hippocratic Oath in these medical sects, a physician is becoming being everything to everybody, which is not setting physicians up for success. It's the origin of the burnout in the industry. It's the origin of the furtive fallacy that somehow we have bad physicians. We do a bad job setting expectations because we haven't specified. America has 66 Horse Shepherd traditions of good doctors, which traces back to Hippocrates, meaning superior in horses. And patients fundamentally want to match with a new medical sect, with their physician. They want their medical sect priorities to match with a physician that has a Hippocratic priorities that make sense for that patient over time. And so getting into the strategic planning process includes a discussion of what are the differences in Hippocratic prioritization within that practice. What are some of the opportunities for differentiation, for serving new patient segments through reprioritization and new prioritization of the Hippocratic Oath? It's central to where we're going as a people. I published it in my book, Perfecting the Brand of American Medicine. We want you to join us. It's incredibly important. And so join us in your strategic planning process at Profi.me.